Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to some EVE Online. Today's video is a bit of a post commentary and I want to talk a little bit about the siege of the system of perimeter that is currently being waged by Pandemic Horde. So Pandemic Horde is currently going after a lot of the structures in the system of perimeter right next to Jita, including several of the player-owned trade hubs, and I find this to be very interesting. On one of my trips to Jita to sell blueprint copies, I noticed that there were reinforced timers there that were ending on Tuesday. So on Tuesday I decided to take a look at what was happening, and it were all of the Pocos that were coming in reinforce, and Pandemic Horde just cleared them out and replaced them with their own. Which can be pretty good. It can be some extra income, of course, if you can own Pocos and other players use them, and then you can tax that activity. But while being in system, I also found a link to a channel where they keep tabs of all of these structures that are being reinforced and all the timers there. Unfortunately, a lot of that seems to be midnight EVE time, which is a little bit late for me on a weekday, but one of the citadels was up for an armor timer at like 21:30 EVE time, so I could still catch that and take a look at how Pandemic Horde sieges all of these citadels if there is any resistance, and I grabbed a little bit of footage from it. So at first, of course, we had all of those Poco timers. They were actually right in my own prime time, and well, this was completely unopposed, so they had a really nice fleet that just went from Poco to Poco as they came out of reinforced, were destroyed in like just a few minutes time, and right away they were replaced with their own Pocos. It made for some pretty nice footage, but it was of course extremely one-sided. During the fight against the Fortizar Citadel, it was a little bit more interesting, although it was still overall a pretty one-sided affair. So you had Pandemic Horde with a fleet of Hurricanes. They were also supported by a second fleet. I think they were Rattlesnakes, could have been Scorpions as well. Just a couple battleships, not that many of them, maybe 10, 15 or so. And on the other side, of course, you had the Fortizar that could actually dish a little bit of damage, but was mostly going after small targets, since of course Pandemic Horde did have logistics for their big hurricane blob. And on the defender side there was I would say a medium-sized fleet of tornadoes and a fleet of rocks, which I think would have been smart bombing rocks. Looking at the entire situation there, Pandemic Horde easily had full control of the field. They could dictate everything. Oh, now that I think about it, at the end I also noticed that they had some like small interceptor frigate gang going around as well, trying to tackle some targets of opportunity, giving them a chance to get some extra kills as well. But the idea, I think, of how would you counter that, you could try with smart bombs, right? If you can get a few battleships amongst the Hurricanes, which are clumped up really close together in order to stay on their optimals, you could do some real damage there, but they had micro-op drives, and the fleet of Pandemic Horde was on their toes, so they would constantly fly away at high speeds once a few of the rocks were starting to get too close to them. So it never really came to a fight. Most of the defenders were around the citadel and were constantly tethered, so they couldn't really do anything about that. Some people made mistakes, maybe aggroed something, not exactly sure how it happened, but here and there you did see a few ships from the defender side get blown up. But overall, yeah, pretty one-sided battle. The siege of perimeter is being won-handedly by Pandemic Horde. The entire situation, though, I find it very interesting. And this is basically the prediction that I had made around player-owned markets when that was first announced, that this could actually become a nice point of contest between EVE Online groups, and even Nullsea groups might want in on some of that sweet tax ISK out here in Heisek. And so for the first time it's happening. It is Pandemic Horde, right? Newbie friendly alliance. Maybe you don't see that much as a threat, but I actually think that this could all be part of basically a money-making scheme that's in the works for Pandemic Legion and Pandemic Horde to try and get that tax income. It's possible that it's a merc contract as well, that someone else is behind this, but I think at some point they are going to realize that once a large enough volume of trade happens on a player-owned structure, that's a lot of tax money that could be going to the coffers of another party that could easily hold that system, that could easily kick out any other competition when it comes to that market. And so yeah, economic warfare on a completely new level, a new dimension of economic warfare, I think is starting to take shape when it comes to the high-sec structures, especially to the market structures in high-sec as well. I find this very, very interesting, and I would say that this is to me an indication that the structure idea in EVE Online is going to become a pretty nice success. You have the Excel citadels, the Excel structures that have of course come in the news because of the massive blobs that went for the first destruction of a keep star, first destruction of active keep star. All of that is very nice and has brought us some of the biggest fights since the introduction of structures. But all around EVE Online you're also having conflicts of all types and sizes that center a lot around these player-owned structures, and the fact that you can actually make some money there, make some ISK inside those structures if you can attract enough customers, which will also attract enough attention for bigger fish, then that creates this very interesting dynamic, I think, where groups are going to come into conflict, and these are becoming, I think, a very good conflict generator across EVE Online that creates content, that creates fights, that creates losses, gets the economy rolling, and I think it's pretty damn awesome to see. So from my point of view, this siege of Perimeter is basically the first real concerted effort when it comes to getting some sort of economic dominance around the new structures in New Eden, and I think that this will only escalate right now. I think maybe some of the bigger groups don't want their name out there to not create vast conflicts in high-sec as well, which is maybe why Pandemic Horde is going after these right now. But at some point I think that this might actually escalate. If you do some calculations around some of the ISK that may be flowing into some coffers, then I think that you can understand that this is a very attractive target, not just for Pandemic Horde, but even for some of the most powerful entities in New Eden as a whole. So there you go, guys. That is a bit of an after report on the siege of Perimeter. If you want to check it out, make sure to head out into Perimeter itself. Try to find a few of the timers. As I said, mostly around midnight EVE time is what I've found, and you can watch some fireworks and some nice pew pew around structures. Hopefully you'll have more luck where the defenders will become a little bit more active. The timer on the Citadel that I witnessed was only an armor timer, so maybe on a final timer there is this last stand from the defenders that could provide some pretty cool content as well. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.